To my brothers and sisters, I greet you all tonight with words of peace and blessings. We are all here standing on an ark that Sandra built. We're here standing on an ark of justice someone else built. That sometimes we know them, like in the case of Sandra, we know her. And in some cases, we don't know them. Those who passed before us, we don't know who they are. We know that they put something in the ground and they built an ark for us to walk on. And so we're walking in history as we speak. We're walking in the endeavors of other people who believe human rights was worth working on to uplift our community and celebrate our collective consciousness. And I'm so happy to see this young lady here. Before I begin, I really do want to take a moment and officially thank individuals and organizations that helped to get us to this point. As I just highlighted for some of you who may not know that Sandra Otten was a catalyst for me and Aaron to get involved in this work. And she's sitting in this room, and so I'm so thankful because I wrote you into my speech and I didn't know you were gonna. She's instrumental in this victory, in the celebration that kicked this whole thing off for us. So I do thank you. I thank you for all of those who are incarcerated and for the families who are going to benefit from that little urge that you had and the spirit that you had for your own son. I thank you. I also want to thank all of us for the collective spirit and being introduced to the Human Rights Defense Center, who started this vanguard position 23 years ago. Really taking this work up to end the exploitative practices of telecommunications in the prison industry. I also want to thank the Center for Media Justice and Magnet, of whom I became acquainted with because of the Independent Media Center. The Media Center has been the incubator of social justice in my life, and certainly in the lives of so many other people, and all of us have connected because of the Independent Media Center. The Center for Media Justice and Magnet and its leadership spearheaded the continuation of the fight since 2011. So this was not a fight that started yesterday. Some people think you get a victory and you just started yesterday. This is a long-standing fight, and I'm so happy to stand in the Independent Media Center as a part of it and its work, and also as a product of it and its work. I also want to thank a few women who, some are not here and others are. I want to personally thank them for their dedication and sacrifice. As I started with Sandra, she's one of them. I also want to thank Miss Wright, who's not here. But this was a grandmother who decided that she was just going to fight the biggest industrial complex that there is, the prison industrial complex, and dedicate herself to making sure she can talk to her loved one. And the lawsuit that we are all talking about now is as a result of this woman. She filed, with the help of other organizations, of course, the Right versus Corrections Corporation of America, CCA, and we have this ruling as a result of her willingness to stand up. But we also want to thank Commissioner Clyburn. I, just like you, were just in awe by this woman who was willing to take on this great big giant and fight them to come out with a great victory for the people. To Commissioner Clyburn, all of us in Central Illinois, thank you. We're going up against a Goliath, and we know it, but we're not deterred because it's women like Danielle Chenoweth, whom I love dearly, a mother, an activist, a lover of humanity, dedicated many years to founding the IMC, all of its work, and then to pick up a national organization and lead it with the type of vigor that only she can bring to the table. I really thank you, Danielle, on behalf of millions of people that don't know who you are, and they won't know, but we'll remember, and we'll write it in history today for the work that you put in for this victory today. It is absolutely a pleasure. These are powerful women and what they have done for us. Sometimes history books don't write it, but we can say we were there. We know of millions of women who are trying to simply talk to their children and their husbands, but the system has been stacked against us. And some people ask me, they say, why are you working on prison phone justice? The disproportionate number of Black and Hispanic Americans locked up in prisons all over this country, you would think that I would be working on prison abolition. And sometimes I say to them, you know, I know the system has failed. I'm pretty clear about that. I've been very transparent from the beginning of my work to now. Greatly diminishing the power of individuals to pull themselves up, giving them an opportunity, but at every turn putting a new block in front of them. I understand all too well how many blocks are in front of people. But the Prison Phone Justice Campaign is not a small matter. People's ability to just simply talk to their family, like you and I are talking, sometimes simply gives them hope when there's no hope at all. And it may seem like a small task to make sure that people can talk to each other, but I talked to a woman in Chicago, and she told me this story. This is a true story. Her name is Pamela, and she has a nephew, no children of her own, and her sister lives in Michigan. Her sister has a son who's incarcerated in the state of Michigan. But it was more expensive for her sister to talk to her son in Michigan than for Pamela to purchase a card for her nephew, have him call her in Illinois, and then she relay the message back to her sister in Michigan, just so that her sister will know that her son is okay. That is the danger of what we have experienced as prison exploitation and what we have done in a small but major victory to end the exploitative practices of prison phone companies. We know that AT&T is going to be after us, y'all. We're pretty clear about that. But the message that Pamela had to relay back to her sister, that message was the hope that the nephew needed to keep going. So as Brian did excellently to tell us our history of this campaign, on October 23rd, 2015, I was excited to be in DC. I was excited because we know that we just wrote history to fight one of the biggest industries in this country and in many cases in the world. The Federal Communications Commission took a historic step that day by capping the cost of prison and jail phone calls. For decades, prisoners and their families have been ruthlessly exploited by telecommunication companies and their government collaborators, as we know, whose profits and gains outweigh the needs of the people to communicate with their loved ones in prison. This work was not a small matter. It took thousands of staff hours, social media campaigns, educating elected officials and members of the FCC, as well as many trips to DC to meet with FCC staff, and untold numbers of organizing across the country, hours to collect stories of those families. Danielle's 2 trips that she commissioned to DC was just the end of a long battle that took many, many years, many trips to DC, even before we got involved in this matter. The Center for Media Justice under Malkia Surreal, who is a dynamic leader, she knew that this was the issue of our day. The FCC's action significantly reduced the cost of prison phone calls to no more than 11 cents per minute, and also reduced calls from jails. This is a huge victory, even if they don't want to say so. It bans all 3 of the ancillary fees that were charged by the telecommunication industry, and when I spoke to the lobbyists for AT&T, I warned him that there would be no telecommunication bill that I would support in the state of Illinois that did not ban commissions. That's what I warned him on. We know that the 1% will stop at nothing to prevent this from going into effect. They will leave no stone unturned in their attempts to evade the FCC rules, which will require vigilance and struggle on our part. This fight is far from being done. Now we are calling upon you to help us stop the ongoing exploitation in the state of Illinois. We will introduce legislation that calls for the elimination of commissions being paid to local governments and to the state coffers. We are far from through with this prison justice fight and have more battles ahead. The IMC, will be leading the fight in Illinois. Will you help them? Will you become a part of the team that's been assembled from activists among you to help end the exploitation in our state? To carry out this fight, we will need you to donate money to this hard work. Time-consuming data gathering, as our researcher over here knows, finding community partners, gathering stories, and finally educating and lobbying legislators. I'm asking you, and I will as well join you in supporting this effort financially, because that is the only way that an organization like the Independent Media Center, without big backers, ain't no money coming from Governor Ronner, that is the only way to equalize the playing field. And I hope you will help us. I have with me tonight about 15 legislative issues around prison phone justice that we will begin to introduce starting in March. And I hope that you'll join us with educating legislators. Join us in telling your stories. Make sure that people know that this is not an issue that they can turn a blind eye to. Our goal in reality is to make sure that the people who are incarcerated know that they are human beings and they deserve the right to turn their lives around, and they do deserve a second chance. I hope you'll join us in the effort. And donate tonight. I brought my wallet so that we can donate tonight and support the efforts of the Independent Media Center. We will be one of a few states who will take up this issue in this spring session. And it will not be easy, because there are paid lobbyists who are standing in the gap. But we are more powerful than them when we begin to tell our stories. So don't stop telling your stories, and please help in the coming months, because this is a campaign that will not stop. Thank you so much for letting me come. Thank you again.